America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. Yvette's handling business right now, and she's working hard. She's going to tell you all about it next week, next Monday. But I am doing the show. It's going to be fantastic, and I have a special guest with me today. His name is Quincy Brewington, and we're going to talk a little bit of hip-hop.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit of hip-hop because that's what he does. And that's what he does. I mean, like, that's what you do.
Yeah, that's my thing.
like it's not, some people kind of do hip-hop. I listen to hip-hop a little bit.
Nah, I study.
But, like, no, I study hip-hop
Yes.
like a science.
Yes, that's like a psychologist.
Like a psychologist. All right, so, Quincy, real quickly, tell me who you are. Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about your dissertation topic.
All right. I'm Quincy Brewington. I'm currently a graduate student, PhD student in educational psychology. I'm actually finishing up my dissertation now, where I focus on the influence of hip-hop culture on the motivations of the undergraduate black men that we have at the University of Georgia. So I'm really excited about that and seeing how those constructs and those things come into being for those black men who, at the state of Georgia, as the flagship institution, we would say are one of the most motivated academically to achieve.
So what does hip hop do to our black men?
So much. It's one of those things where it does so. Hip hop is very complex, especially the culture where it can do so much and do so little at the same time.
Because sometimes it doesn't do much.
Right, because it exists in a larger house of a culture. So sometimes we forget that hip-hop culture may only be for the young people, and you kind of graduate out of that into the larger black African culture to understand what hip-hop culture meant to that. A lot of times we forget, and that's what has been coming out in some of my conversations, that hip-hop culture has influenced me primarily because of the timing, chronologically. But if I'd have grew up in the 1920s, it might have been jazz. I'd be like, man, jazz culture is taking over, and my parents were saying, no, that's the devil's music, and all those same dynamics.
Yeah, jazz had a hard time in the church.
Right,
Yeah.
all those same, or rock and roll, all those same dynamics are what are going to be there, and hip hop is just the buzz right now.
All right, but it's our buzz.
It's our buzz, and understand that those same jazz people, those same rock and roll people are our elders now. So we have to now, which hip hop culture is going through now, going 40, 50 years in, figure out how we're going to let it age. Like when Jay-Z's older, are we going to be like go to the 65-year-old Jay-Z concert? Are we going to go
Jay-Z's not a young man.
He's not a young man, but it's one of those things where hip-hop culture has to age because now our forefathers of hip-hop culture, the founders of hip-hop culture, are grandparents. They're becoming grandparents now, not parents. We're talking about grandparents. Yeah. When you really start thinking about how this is progressing. So we have hip-hop parents, and that's a conversation we're starting to have. And soon after that, you got to have a conversation about hip-hop grandparents.
What do hip-hop grandparents look like? So, all right. So we do black politics here.
Right.
We do black politics. That's what we do. That's what we do, people. That's what we do here at Brigham Brown. We do black politics. And apparently the BET's found a place in the black political imagination.
Right.
I think 2 years ago, it was Jesse L. Williams.
Right.
Who did it on BAT, and he said, we gotta look out for our sisters, we gotta look out for our people.
Right.
I'm an entertainer, but I'm not only an entertainer. There was Helly Belafonte before me,
right,
and Paul Robeson before me. I'm here. I'm going to use my platform to spread justice.
Right.
And now, 2 years later, we got a young man, a Mr. Chancellor Bennett.
Yes.
Also known as Mr. Chance the Rapper, taking the BET, and that's a decent, definitely black audience.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty big microphone, and he's saying something that's just not all about what people consider party hip hop.
Right.
He wasn't up there talking about acid rap.
Right.
He was up there talking about something else. So tell me, why does a person like Chance the Rapper, what's in it for him? What's he trying? What's going on there? Let's start at the beginning. What is the BET Awards in the black imagination? What do we?
Well, one thing about the BET Awards, especially in this current presentation, is that it's one of the few award shows that a black entertainer will have opportunity to engage in that will be primarily focused on black entertainment, as the name implies.
We're talking about black people here.
Right. Understand that this. Almost everyone here is going to be a black person that's going to be awarded. That's not like the Grammys. That's not like the Tonys or any of those other awards where everyone will be considered. Now, I put that in quotes intentionally. So it's one of those things where the BET Awards are trying to represent this music and entertainment. So when they're, especially in this current paradigm, conversations about Black death and Black bodies, BET has to address it. So what's in it for Chance the Rapper is being relevant in that conversation. And that's a dangerous as well as a empowering place to be, because being relevant in that conversation is where
Michael Jordan, another Chicago person, had a chance to be relevant in that conversation, and he passed.
Very different than LeBron James. Like as a person who follows sport and enjoys sport, understanding the power of an athlete also using his voice. I was a person who was an athlete that knew athletes were also intellectuals. They're gifted individuals. So we oftentimes were taking.
They're not just a black body who can hit another black body.
I was in the Math and Science and Engineering Academy in high school with 2,000-yard rushers, 30 points a game scorers, and it's like these guys are coming to this for other reasons. It's like, no, these guys are intellectuals as well. They're taking the same courses as the person who got a scholarship at MIT, UNC, and those places like that. So it's very fascinating to understand that hip hop, from my study and how I look at motivation, can motivate the drug dealer as much as the PhD. And it's the same message, but how they take it and how they utilize that message will be in two different ways, but often sometimes similar avenues. Jay-Z oftentimes talks about, I haven't changed my skills, I changed my environment. Right. That's the only thing that changed. I changed my environment. I learned the new rules of the game. But me, as far as hustling, it's been the same.
The problem is when Jay-Z was hustling, that wasn't, when he was drug dealing, that wasn't particularly good for the black community.
Right.
So if all you're doing is just slanging CDs like you were slanging cane, that's not helping it's not helping the community.
And giving out turkeys on Thanksgiving doesn't put the Band-Aid on what you're doing to the larger community.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of our conversations now are changing too. So this is, again, what's in it for Chance is to be a part of that conversation of what's going on in Chicago. Like, I recently went to Chicago, and I'm a person that I love going to neighborhoods and thinking and figuring out, is this propaganda, or is this really what's going on in Chicago? It's really going down in Chicago. So it's one of those things where, like you talk, Michael Jordan not utilizing that voice, even being in Charlotte, but Chicago is still going on. So having someone like Chance the Rapper making that a part of his music, making that a part of speeches, Jesse L. Williams, making that a part of, anytime I have a platform, this needs to come up in conversation to make people uncomfortable because it needs to be addressed.
Okay, so that's good. So the rap can be marshaled. It's definitely marshaled for motivation.
Right.
Motivation is one of those double-edged swords. You could be motivated to do something bad, or you could be motivated to do something good, or you could be motivated to be indifferent on whether it's bad and good and just be motivated to make that money.
And there's a place for that. There's a place for the indifference, and I think that this current generation, taking the time to be indifferent and figure it out is sometimes sold too short. So one thing about Chance the Rapper and the people who follow people like Chance the Rapper is that from acid rap to this latest album, the 3 album, or the Coloring Book album, it's taking that time to go from self-evaluation, depression, and those things to not talk about the things going on around me. Because Chance had a good opportunity to just talk about his middle-class lifestyle and how difficult that's been his whole life.
He's not Chance. If you don't know, Chance isn't like you.
Right.
Black people at home, unless you have. When Michelle Obama said, "I've known Chance since he was a baby,"
right? That wasn't.
Unless you've known Michelle Obama since you were a baby, like your life wasn't Chance's life.
Well, let's give it some roots though. As a history teacher, talking about the history of Chicago as far as Black Chicago, as far as after similar to New York City, Harlem, Chicago has that type of structure of Black people who have been wealthy since Chicago was invented because it was founded by a Black man. So,
but not all of those Black people who have been wealthy have been working in the best interests of Black people. There is a collaborator class we need to talk about.
That's an absolute
Donna
fact.
Brazile might not have my best interests in mind.
Absolute fact. That's big facts. I can't even argue that because that's how those cities operate. There's not been oppression without coercion, and that's one thing that I feel like we forget. That I had a conversation earlier and was like, let's always be reminded there is an elite system that incorporates all, because it still has to, similar to that sign you used to see in your elementary school class, if it was only 100 people, we still have to incorporate others for this system to work.
Okay, so we need Negro managers.
We have to have that. We have to have Negro overseers. We have to have people on the plantation who are going to, who get those side deals.
Right.
Who their situation is not going to be as bad. We always call them house Negroes. Like, no, there's people in the field too. Understand, there's people in the field. It's like, I really don't have to work like you guys work.
Yeah.
Because Massa knows this is how it goes. So, or this is how my mind works in this system. I'm bought in. So that's the struggle BET and the award show, as I watch, dealt with, which is while Chance the Rapper shows this image or gives out this message, on the flip end of that, you got thighs all over the place. You got black bodies all over the place. You have black sexuality all over the place,
right,
which feeds into a propaganda of black sexuality and being perverse in those type of conversations. Or black people over sexualized, kind of that stereotype that is still age old.
Okay, so I got a question. When Beyonce says she's talking to an audience of black people, but also a lot of white people at that Super Bowl.
Right.
When Beyonce says, you, black person, you could be the next Bill Gates in the making.
Right.
Is that social control, or is she just trying to spread a truth?
I'm a both and person as a contemporary pragmatist, so it's hard for me to say one or the other.
I think she's trying to sell us.
Absolutely sell, because
sell an aspiration
right
that's just not. You're not going to be.
But
you're not going to be You're not going to be Bill Gates.
But
that's
even using Bill Gates as the
that's not your life.
As the model or as the role model for African American men or women,
right.
Shows your perspective of African American.
Do I even want to be Bill Gates?
Invention in America.
Maybe I want to be Thurgood Marshall. Maybe I want to be Medgar Evers.
One thing I have to have a great conversation with my U.S. history students was what African Americans have brought to the American invention to save. And we had cars before we had stoplights.
Right.
Understand, that's how the mindset went. Like, let's just get on the road and go fast. And let's not think about safety. Let's not think about interaction between you and other drivers. Those are things that's what, even when it comes to medicine, even when it comes to medicine, blood transfusion, it's still an interactionary approach to medicine versus it's just you versus just you versus just you. That competitive idea.
Right. Is that so? Interaction. Hip hop is a medium to facilitate black interaction,
and that's why BET Awards will always, to some degree or another, try to cover the bases of black people. That's really what. Anytime you have something called black entertainment, put black in front of anything, people know we're going to try to cover the basis of this. So every time we quote unquote have a black movie, the issue oftentimes is that black movie tries to cover the basis of black people. So Think Like a Man may have been a middle class black movie, but it's still going to have those quote unquote hood aspects to appeal to.
Look, with 30, I think it was 28% poor, and that poor is poor. That's
right.
Poverty, and so just above poverty. It's still like $35,000 for a family of four. That's not a lot.
Not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money. So a lot of us are broke.
But we're still the people that are trying to be siphoned money from.
Yeah.
So it's still one of those things where watching TV is an experience. Sometimes like I wonder what if I was of any other race, what watching TV would be like, because there's nothing but hip hop music now.
Yeah.
It's nothing but slang and things you have to look up on Urban Dictionary.
Right.
So at what point in time, like, I'm being advertised to more so like 80% of the time, while when I turn to CNN and MSNBC, that's when I start getting my retirement, Ameritrade, TD Waterhouse. That's when I get my other commercial. Oh, this is what other people see on TV. I'm a late night person, so you get paid programming.
You get your Mercedes-Benz commercials.
Right.
And all those things they're not trying to sell to us.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not beer commercials. It's one thing that even looking at that industry of beer commercials, alcohol and things like that, it's like, even in that culture of Budweiser and stuff like that, you're still advertising culturally. So I know I've lived in Charlotte. The NASCAR commercial during that season versus the commercial that may come on BT Awards. Bud Light sells to both. So they're indiscriminatory about the money that comes in, but yet and still, the commercial is going to be culturally related and try to make this beer seem cool. And cool in hip hop culture, style of hip hop culture is going to look different than NASCAR culture.
In a relevant way.
A very relevant way.
All right. So if you're just joining now, I'm here with Mr. Quincy L. Brewington. He's a PhD. He's a PhD student at University of Georgia, like myself. We're here in Athens, Georgia, doing our thing, doing black politics every Monday and Wednesday night. Here's the deal. Since Yvette's not here, I'm going to need you. Let me put the IME cam so I can look right at it. All right, so I'm going to need you, viewer, to like this video on YouTube so more people see it. Go to your social media, share it on your social media, and then if you tweet it out, to all the people, because we're solving problems here.
Right.
We're solving problems here. And right now, I'm going to talk about why is black politics and black life, actually, I don't know about black life, why is our politics and why is our concern, why is black people stuff being ghettoized to criminalization? Like, we do a lot of things.
Right.
We do a lot of things. It's more than just, like, we have a lot of political priorities, I should say.
Right.
We're worried about jobs. We're worried about, you got a lot of people in Flint worried about the environment.
Right.
And not just Flint. People think it's just Flint. It's not just Flint.
It's
Everywhere there's a congregation of Negroes,
yes,
check the water.
Yes.
Am I overstating?
No, that's facts. That's facts again. You know what's that? Facts.
Yeah. Everywhere there's a congregation of Negroes, check the water. So, like, we have environmental politics concerns. We have, jobs. Martin Luther King marched for freedom, jobs and freedom. We still don't have jobs.
But job creators are definitely a major political conversation right now.
Right.
These idea of job creators, what does that really mean?
What does that mean?
These are
Uber's a job creator, right?
Right.
But, I don't want that job.
But it's one of those things where creating this independent contraction that still involves a corporation.
Right.
And understand that the corporation has the same interaction with the government that you have.
Right.
We grew up in the era, we lived through the era of George Bush when these corporations are people. And when I first started hearing that conversation, I was like, now I have to.
They don't die like people.
Right. They have to, but now I think about corporations.
They don't live like people live.
No, you can't roll up on them like you roll up on anybody else.
Can't shake down a corporation.
Right. You got issues with me, corporation. Now I got to roll up on you. That's something that can happen. So it's one of those things where our engagement, especially as what we call quote unquote buzzword millennials, has been very different because we've been living with corporations our whole life.
Right.
And in many ways, for some people, corporations have been one parent or both.
Okay.
If you include government as a part of a major corporation, that if you go into the foster care system or any type of social service, the government was imitating a parental figure. So it's one of those things where you now have this idea that this is how it's supposed to be. Like, this is how, like, even in the conversation at the BET Awards, which is bringing it back home, there's a conversation of the responsibility of the government that offsets that responsibility of the community.
Right. Well, here's the deal. We live in a capitalist society, but we don't have a lot of investment capital. Right. When
intentionally, like Dr. Claude Anderson would talk about, like, not only black people trying to get the economic center, the things that this system and the capitalist system needs to live and breathe, but that being taken, and not just siphoned away, bombed away, taken away, like literally, like, oh no, we said we're going to give this, and we didn't give that. We also took this.
My favorite story about Black Wall Street. If you don't know, Black Wall Street was a town, Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the 20s, in the teens and 20s, that actually had built up a vibrant black business center, and they built up a vibrant black business center, and then some white people saw it and said, this is a vibrant black business center.
Inspired.
They took notes first.
Right.
They're like, you guys are doing some things here. And then they bombed it. Well, apparently there was a firefight, and from what I hear, like, the black business owners were actually in it. They thought they were going to win.
They defended their businesses.
Yeah, we thought we were going to win this until, like, they brought in the planes with bomb.
Anytime there's been a conflict where we could black versus other, or black versus white conflict, like in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there has been that show of this is a full system of white supremacy that goes, illusion white supremacy that goes further than just these people in this small locale.
Right.
Like, that's one thing that's been very clear and apparent. Let's even go to Ole Miss and trying to get him into school. James Meredith in school. So it's kind of like, oh no, we need to bring in the National Guards. We don't need to bring in we don't need to bring in the police, because we understand the police, the National Guard need to be part of the conversation, and sometimes we need to even figure out which side they are on.
That's funny. I've never met, I know a lot of white people. The viewers, you know me, I know a lot of white people. I know,
Facts.
To college, I went to high school, I know a lot of white people. I never meet white people who say, my granddaddy was part of the Klan. My granddaddy was actually on the other side of these rallies.
Right.
My granddaddy was a police officer in whatever town.
No families ever came to me and admitted that my great grandfather Linton.
He was that picture. Yeah, was at lynching. But I see a lot of white people in those pictures. Did they not procreate?
It's one of those things where the millennial generation, I keep using this buzzword because it kind of hits on so much. What we really deal with is the idea that the people I went to class with couldn't be like this. No, there's no way that I went to school with these people, because you guys told me, let's go back to our parents, you guys told me there's no way that these people could be this way with exposure to us. Right. Not knowing that that's only contact time at school. These people are being raised and molded by a society historically.
Right, and this isn't just men, this is women too.
This is where neoliberalism comes from.
Yeah.
With this idea where it's, oh no, I'm a forward thinker.
History doesn't matter.
I'm a forward thinker. It's all about individual rights, and corporations are individuals. So now you start mixing in this cauldron of philosophy that you don't know where this came from. You don't know what this Frankenstein of ideas and thoughts.
Big deal in the black culture. That's our claim, people. Like, look, the white wealth that was the white wealth. I'm looking at the camera. Okay. The white wealth that was made off of slaves as property is still in the system. Still in the system.
Great documentary. BBC has Forgotten Slave Owners.
Oh.
Where it's one of those things where in the slave system, historians like myself love that it was documented. People during that time period, like now, documentation is always going to be there. So the changing of names, who owed books. So anytime slavery was questioned, people are like, oh, no. Understand, if you're going to take money from me, I've been a part of this economic system for a long time. So if you're going to take money from me, I need to be paid for that money, not only now, but prorated. That's in Great Britain. So if in Great Britain we're modeled after them, that same type of, during our Civil War, what we have to talk about is, after that, what happened? Who got money? Who got prorated money because they were millionaires during the slave system? Right. Because that same type of idea happened here, and people don't want to talk about. That's why now a 14-year-old may have a Mercedes-Benz versus you, who you've been 24 years old working since you were 14, and you don't have a car.
Yes.
That's something that simple.
No, really. Well, what it really hits home when people don't know, and we mentioned this on the show, I want to say, about 3 weeks ago when I read an article that said Richard Spencer, if you don't know Richard Spencer is one of the leaders of the alt-right. He started a news magazine called The Alternative Right, and it's a white supremacist magazine. It turns out he got his investment capital from his mom. His mom bought a warehouse and some properties, commercial properties in Montana. And then it's like, well, where did the mom get the money? Mm-hmm. It turns out, would you believe, the mom is an heiress from cotton farms in Louisiana.
It's not hard to tell. That's one of those things where,
if you're an heiress from cotton farms in Louisiana, let's call that what that is. That's slave money.
I'm from North Carolina. So it's one of those things where the idea of...
There's no way that's not slave money.
Reynolds and P.J. Moore, Philip Morris, it's one of those things where
slave money.
I'm from tobacco country, tobacco, cotton, and pickles. It's that's one of those things where that's what we do there: barbecue, chicken, and pig. Living in the Southeast it's a constant reminder of the slave system, because even going to schools that are named after Confederate generals, going to a campground the YMCA had where Robert E. Lee Hall's on the top of the hill, a big white building on the top of a hill. This is one of the things where, as a black politician at that time in high school, continually reminding them that I have an issue with this, because you taught me this in school. This has not been only you didn't just teach me I was in AP US history as a student, so you taught me the critical analysis piece. Well, I know who Robert E. Lee is, General Robert E. Lee, and how he felt about people not like him.
I want my cut. But
you can't. But one thing they can't guarantee me is that Robert E. Lee and his descendants didn't get their cut and continually get it.
No, they do. The money's still in the system. Aetna, the insurance company, they insured slaves because they're property, and you want to make sure that if something happened to your property, you want to pay out. Just like if you crash a car, you want to make sure that you get your collision insurance.
And a car is a very good barometer of the system and what they were insuring. Because the idea of insurance came from that system. Right. That's what you're bringing, historical context to. So it's kind of think of a slave as a car. That's why that number is very important, because it's kind of they were looking at individual human beings with that same accessory, what comes with you in your life that I can buy. So me as a certain age, black man, you worth $300. You should, if you would have been stronger, you'd be $375. And understand that's the difference between a Porsche and a Honda Civic. Sometimes, in the eyes of the slaveholder, and that's just, it's one of those things where that mentality, as a psychologist, understand I'm a traditionally trained psychologist, is in DNA. Those memories are encoded in DNA, and those things are being proven but not being linked to those historical pieces.
Right. So we've just talked about how the wealth from slavery is still in the system. It's still in Aetna. It's still was transmitted and bequeathed until it founded the white supremacist magazine in Montana.
Right.
That wealth is still in the system.
I like to use the illusion of white supremacy because it's one of those things where to look at it and understand it as white supremacy takes more from the individual. And that's from a psychological point of view. Like he's saying that white supremacy is internalizing that it's real.
Right.
This one, it's illusory because it has to operate.
Right.
It has to operate in some forms where similar to a spiritual thing where there's no explanation to it.
Right.
It just happens this way. So sometimes when we've seen in legal cases, it's kind of like, well, what's the explanation for why this person was acquitted? It's like, you have to believe the illusion to understand it. So that's the conversation that we're having on BET Awards. Is keep going back to it like, well, we got to stop having this illusion.
The illusion of white supremacy. That's it. All right, people. So you heard it here first. We no longer say white supremacy alone. It's always the illusion of white supremacy. So what happened was Louisiana cotton farm money, that's slave money if you don't know, made it through the Spencer family, through Richard Spencer's mother, and then ended up being the investment capital for the alt-right magazine. So,
can I add a little bit more to that Louisiana part? Going to places like Savannah, Louisiana, we forget that it's an African diaspora. And the idea of diaspora is a dispersal. So they dispersed people from inland North America as much to Louisiana, which they brought people into Louisiana to buy. So it was a slave trade at the port. And by trade, I mean you had to bring people to this port as much as you were buying people to take somewhere else. We can't forget that as historically accurate. That people were not only just coming into North America, they've been taken out as well.
Yeah. Huh. I never actually think about that. But, so the generational wealth is still in the system. We can prove it. Facts. We have documents. I insured this Negro. This is Aetna. They made money off of insuring black people, and New York Life and a whole bunch of other people made money. The money is still in the system. Whoever was in the stock market at that time, those stocks are still in the system, and then they've been appreciating at the regular American stock market value.
Human beings were the original money, and that's a sad reality that we're still dealing with as far as. I don't go to jail. I'd rather pay for that person's life if I killed them in a car accident.
Oh,
that punitive part of the court system, of the entire system of this money and value is more important than even when it comes to humans. Because I wanted to buy and trade humans for the original technology, which is getting his cotton out of his feet.
Yeah, so the wealth is still in the system, and then when property becomes people, they're automatically poor. So the generational wealth is still in the system, and the generational poverty is still in the system.
Right.
And that's why Richard Spencer has the investment capital while...
Never worked a day in his life.
Yeah, never worked a day in his life. Well, yeah, he had the investment capital, and I'm sure he doesn't have school loans.
Right.
And all of those things from aggregated, compounded slave money. Just compounded slave money for hundreds of years. He looks real white. So probably a few hundred years.
How did our 45th get here? Right. Understand that he hasn't worked a day of his life as far as anybody working to accumulate wealth. He doesn't understand a what we would call normalized schedule. So most of us go to bed at a certain time because we have responsibilities in the morning. This person never had that structure because of that aggregated generational wealth that from slave money. And that's one thing that's always difficult to take in.
I want my money back. I want my cut.
Because now it's the personality that we now deal with, because this idea that I have worked hard for this money, without the reality that that's not the case.
No, slave money paid for Richard Spencer's. I did a little bit of research on him. It paid for his. He went to a very nice private school. He got a master's at the University of Chicago, and one of those unfunded masters. So it paid for a $40,000 master's degree. The University of Chicago.
Did anybody donate during that same period of time while he was there under the Spencer name? But we'll keep going.
Yeah. So slave money is paid for a lot. Besides just this alt-right, but we need our cut because we live in a capitalist society without capital. And you could say, and this is actually we're gonna get into this because you're a hip hop expert. People can say, well, you don't really need capital to be an artist now. You just need to make your art and put it on the internet.
No.
No. Right in the camera. So young person, 15 years old.
No.
People thinking, well, I just need to make my mixtape. I got my Apple. I got my iPhone. I can make it on my iPhone, and then I can, because Chance the Rapper did it, right? He's independent.
No.
So
the reason why hip hop started, especially for me as a Southern hip hop fan first and researcher second, You started with T.I. being my favorite, this trap idea, because you needed capital to sell those mixtapes. Like, you needed capital to record the tapes, to download, to burn the CDs, to put the CD together, to then sell it out of your trunk. So where am I going to get this capital from? Especially in a place like Atlanta, where similar to today, you have these people who white flag makes all the money on the suburban areas of Atlanta, while poor black people occupy the center, that 285 area. So it's kind of like, how am I going to get money in this place? Now, there's a couple different ways, and that's what he talked about. We found other ways of getting money, but this is what got us into. So what we got into was what we thought was the safest route, which may have been trapping, to get to this route. Even when you go to people like we consider conscious rap, like Outkast, they even talk about the Dungeon family did some other things as well to keep themselves viable while they're trying to create this music and make money with their art. So this is why, like you said, I got to get my cut, because how else am I going to eat every day? Because the system requires it. It's not a system where...
No, we live in a capitalist society. We're not in the game unless you have not just capital to eat. You need investment. You need marketing. You need designing. You need actually good microphones.
Right.
Like, it takes a lot to put out a good album.
Because now what's happened, and corporations have done a great job of this, that we all now have engaged with customer service. So they were at one point in time, just 20, 30 years ago, go to Mayberry, and it's like, well, I just interacted with people in my area. I don't know what this idea of customer service is other than this person's nice. You know what I'm saying? That kind of idea versus now it's like, well, I've called people who have these different systems that now you're supposed to serve me in a certain way. So when you have these upstarts, you have to meet that level of customer service that could be illusory. Just as illusionary as everything I've talked about. Like, does Sprint really take care of you as much as they, propel out there?
Well, they got Jamie Foxx on, or is that Verizon? Yeah, see,
Verizon, yeah.
Here's the thing about Jamie Foxx and Verizon. He can't get a Chrysler commercial.
Right.
He can't get a Tag Heuer watch commercial.
Why is that?
He's an Oscar winner.
Right.
Matthew McConaughey, I don't know if Matthew McConaughey won an Oscar. But
I know Time to Kill.
Oh,
Time to Kill was cold.
But like he can get on Tag Heuer. He can get on Matthew McConaughey can get that real Oscar money. But you got Jamie Foxx out there tap dancing for Verizon, and I suspect that's not the same Skrilla. Why is that the case?
There's a constant message that no matter what our success is as entertainers, as athletes, if you really watch the numbers, there's complaints about the money we get as former slaves, as former indentured people. Like, we're due our cut, we're due reparations, but at every move, LeBron gets $1 billion from Nike. It's like, is that too much? Could he not be satisfied? It's like, ho. LeBron James' ancestors were never paid. So this is, and we're talking about back pay plus some.
Yeah, and he was bred to be 6'8".
Understand that it's facts. That's one thing to understand, that literally watch sports every day. That these people were bred generations ago to be this way.
Right. He should let the man make his money.
We're only starting to get to him getting that $1 billion contract is only the beginning, as far as reparations due to people that has been still making money off through investments in other avenues.
So what kind of pass do you give to the people who or younger Jay-Z? I think Jay-Z's kind of changed his tune, but like regular Michael Jordan, what kind of pass do you give them for saying, I don't want to do politics. I'm here to do my thing, make my money.
I give you much less of a pass than I like to, because I'm an educator. So it'd be different if I was a person who was a businessman or a person who looked at the world I'm a soft science kind of person. Right. So it's like, while that's good, you want to make your money, that's a cop-out, because you understand and you've seen that. What's the reason why you want to make your money? Because you've probably seen that people like us in this situation don't have it, and you need to be more critical and analytical of why that is the case as a system. So sometimes when I get in a conversation about the capitalist system with people, it's like, well, we can overcome it. It's like, well, no. Capitalism has made a system for you not to overcome it.
No, they want to keep you consuming at a low level. They don't want you producing. Producing is where the power is.
But that's why they celebrate it like a lottery when you beat the system and like, oh, you became a billionaire. Yeah. Welcome to the house. Like, welcome. Now you have to turn
That's
around.
not a strategy for community uplift.
No. It's making money that way is not the strategy. Participation over these years has not led to anyone truly beating the system. Right. It's never led to that.
Right. That's the system that uses those people to spread propaganda to keep black people away, I think. And this is me talking. This is to keep black people away from doing the kind of politics we're doing right here at Breaking Black.
Because what I love about it is that Every time a politician comes up, they're like, let's go back through his family history and see what his family did throughout history. And it's like, his family was doing the founding of this and the founding of that. It's like, because the same families that have ran this place, and I'm just going to say that place because I have other words in my mind, are the same families running it today. It will not change and does not change because that's how the capitalist system works. Let's ground that even further. How did European systems work? We study that in school all the time, and how European systems worked is the people who were always in power stayed in power. So if anytime somebody came as opposition, it's like, well, how about this? We can marry in.
All right, so
we'll give the power to you. So.
Okay, so I'm going to take. Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can flip the script and use this maybe. All right, so it's possible. It's possible. Just like we've been generationally poor and we're generationally locked out.
Right.
If we do our jobs right, we might be able to do a generational politics. I got daughters. I got sons. I mean, I do have a son now. I got a son named him Bayard Weston. After Bayard Weston. Got a son just born named Bayard. I got daughters. I want them. I want my legacy. I want my legacy on Earth to be, doing black politics, helping black people get their justice. But I want my legacy through them to be the kind of people who appreciate what I do, not as a moneymaker, but as a black educator, as a person who cares about black politics. Right. And he cares about justice. It's not just about these people are mine because they're mine. No, we have a justice claim.
Right. We
have a justice claim. So if you care about justice in America, you got to care about getting black people what they're due. So I want my legacy more than I want my sons and daughters, and I tell them that I expect my daughters to spend some time in jail because if you care about black people, you might have to spend some time in jail. Hey. Look, you put a list of all the black people who mattered for us, who spent some time in the jail,
and people didn't.
Okay, you can have your Ralph Bunche and Barack Obama. I'll take Malcolm and Martin, and Bayard Rustin. I don't know what side you want to be on when they put you in the ground.
Right.
I think I want to be on the side of the people who spent some time.
And that's why. Seeing T-shirts like "I'm not my grandparents," what you're kind of talking about to me is understanding and having that generational conversation where we understand together what people really put in. As much as we want to say Martin Luther King couldn't go as far as he wanted to because he was assassinated, it's yes, but he got as far as he could.
He got as far as he could. So here's another cat who got as far as he could, and it's important because someone in the chat I just looked in chat real quick. They said mention a young man from Jackson, Mississippi, who just won an election, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, and has pledged to make Jackson, Mississippi, the most radical city about black politics in these United States, and he can do it. A man named Chokwe Lumumba, and I'm going to do this because I was at a conference, and yes, that is me with Mr. Chokwe Lumumba, right there, right there. Yep. That's me and Chokwe. By the way, black people, if you know this, if you ever see I didn't know this, and we do black political education here. If you ever see a star and you want to take a picture with a star, don't just stand next to him and look like, I'm just standing next to a celebrity.
Right.
No, you see that hand grab we got right there? You want that picture.
Right.
You want that picture where it's we're in it together, shaking hands,
we talk before
or something
this.
like that. Well, something like we talk before this, we might talk after this. Anyway, we're in the struggle together.
Right.
That's what you want in the picture. We're in the struggle together. There's mutual respect. We're in it. So if you ever see a picture with a celebrity, make sure it's not just a hand around. Make sure that people see it we're in it together. It's just he's taking a picture with me. I'm not just taking a picture with him. He's taking a picture of me, and we're in the struggle together. So that's me and Chokwe. Now, Chokwe's got the idea of we're going to start black co-ops, and with the black co-ops, what we're going to do is get them city contracts.
Right.
And we're going to build capital that way. That's fine. And I want one question, since you're also an educator. Once again, Chokwe Lumumba, keep an eye out for him in Jackson, Mississippi. One question, since you're an educator, and we're about 3 generations away from being just maids and sharecroppers. 3 generations, we're maids and sharecroppers. How do we learn everything we need to learn to get where we need to go? Because I know how to do some things, and you know how to do some things too, but there's a lot of things that we don't know how to do.
Well, because
I can't build a house. I can build a studio, kind of. I had to teach myself on YouTube, but I can't do a lot. There are apprenticeships and stuff.
Well, Emerson would say self-reliance is gone. And what I mean by that is my mom didn't send me to Guilford County Public Schools with the idea or even imagination that they're going to teach him everything he needs to know. They're going to have him in the architecture class and those type of classes.
I've never met a black architect.
I have, but it's one of those things where Charlotte had an architecture school. So that's, it's one of those things, but it's still one of those things where the idea that I was doing things on the weekend with family. I was going camping. I was doing things that engaged me in ways that when I come back to school, I have a cultural knowledge that I'm kind of like, oh no, I've seen this before. Yeah, that bug right there, like that bug. Yeah, I have this conversation. We had this conversation outside. Right. We didn't have this conversation inside four walls. You're trying to show me a slide, and we didn't have the PowerPoint. We had transparencies, so it's like this is not real for me. And that video is grainy. Like it wasn't HD back then. So still having those engagement experiences. That's one thing that bringing hip hop into the classroom is changing the experiences for a lot of students. That's really where the things are coming. Where we need to start going towards like. Charter schools are trying to engage students in a different way than the public schools. But if we keep trying to emulate public school education, we're still going to fall short where we can't build houses. And we can't plant a whole farm of things for a community. Not just like a small farm for just you and your household. I'm talking about a farm for everyone.
A community. A
community and be able to run that with people and personalities.
And be able to know what to do to run that. Like, we're not in mining. Someone could give me a mine. I don't know what to do with a mine, man.
Right.
Like, I could do hip hop, and you can talk hip hop.
But part of that, too, is that the way we look at the world is so different. And that's one thing that I always have to bring back into the conversation because who says we would be mining the same way that mining is currently going on? Just because of how we look at the world and how we look at engaging with the earth. Like, coming to grad school has pushed me to your philosophical ideologies can be string through your whole life. So it's kind of like, well, I'm just this type of person. I'm not sure I will be mining the same way because of how I look at going into the earth. When I go camping, how do I have this imprint on the earth?
When I go camping.
Yes. Like, how do I have this?
Someone's mom is an architect in Charlotte.
See?
Hey. Evie Robbins, where did your mom go to school? Because I don't.
I'll say probably in Charlotte, NC State I think has a school, and Virginia Tech has.
And they're graduating black architects.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we're talking about architectural engineering.
Yeah. My mom, even a woman, a lady architect.
Oh yes.
I came for my flight back from the People Summit. I took pictures with I took a picture with Ben Jealous, who's a big dude. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Ben Jealous is a big dude. Yes, he's like 6'3" too. He's a big dude.
There's a lot of big black men who do things.
Besides just like
right.
Yeah. So I went to the People Summit, did my thing at the People Summit, and the one picture I didn't get was coming out at Atlanta airport. I was, I got my bag and I'm coming home. And then I get out of the airplane, and you know what I see? I see a lady pilot.
Yes.
I see a lady pilot. Think about it. When's the last time you saw a lady pilot? I was like, ooh, lady pilot. I wanted to get my picture, but I was too nervous. I mean, I thought it'd be rude, but I wanted to get a picture with the lady pilot. Because there aren't a lot of them.
Because we're given this, I wrote a paper recently where we're given this narrative sometimes that black boys and men have an aversion to feminism black feminism specifically, but that's not the case. It's one of those things where how can that be the case while mass incarceration happened at the same time? So while you're taking black men out of the community, that community still was being occupied by black women and ran by black women. So it's like, from my experience specifically, my elementary school principal was a black woman. Right. Middle school, black woman. You know what I'm saying? Postal work, black woman. So everybody who was of authority and a role in my community were black women.
That's the only thing that makes sense. You look at the way the labor market takes care of black men. Like, we work sometimes.
Right.
Like, throughout the history of America, since we've been in chains, we've been useful sometimes. Black women have always been useful. Like, in terms of economic stability, black men. And so when people talk to me about, like, well, patriarchy is in the black community too. No, black.
The ideologies of patriarchy are prevalent.
Yeah, but
the reality of it.
When you got Erica Badu saying, call Tyrone. To get his stuff home. Right. Like, there's no white song like that because they have real patriarchy. Right. That's real patriarchy where we don't even joke about it.
I wouldn't dare call Tyrone because you're getting out of my house.
That's because real patriarchy is like, no, don't let that song doesn't get on the radio. That's real patriarchy. Black people don't have that because there is no black patriarchy because archy means rule, and black men have been taking orders from black women for as long as they've been alive. I mean, my mom was a single mom, and I've always had black female authority figures. You can be a white man and never have a white woman and just watch your dad treat your mom badly.
Right.
That's never been the case.
And understanding that that's the way it's supposed to be, because part of the propaganda that happens in the man culture is that all men are all men in the cultural aspect of things, not in the power,
right,
not in the resources,
right,
but when it comes to social conversation, all men are like all men. And that's one of the things that I've always...
Yeah, but that's just false.
That is so false.
False, like white man and black man, not the same thing.
And it's not
the same.
Intentionally that way, because
we're the target.
Even engaging with my students at UGA and hearing conversations, I had to taught a class about racism and educational psychology, race and racism.
Right.
And it's like, well, my dad, I don't want to think of my dad that way. Like, I know he's not a bad
person.
person.
White guy or black guy?
White
Oh,
guy.
yeah. Well,
so it's like, he's not a bad person. I don't ever want to tell you dad's a bad person, but you have to be accountable of who he is and who he's shown himself to be.
Someone's grandfather had to be in that Klan picture.
You know how he talks to your mother. Like, he talked, the story, giving more context, he said, your mom's work, like your mom's type of work. I know you're gonna get a real job now. Like, it was kind of that real work versus woman's work conversation.
See, that's not how black men talk.
We can't talk that way.
We're just happy they got a job. You got a job, good for you.
And understanding oftentimes that job is better, or it requires a degree. Yeah. Things that I do not have. Like, I'm one of the few, I have to remind myself, one of the few black men who have degrees.
Yeah, black men, we're in PhD programs. There's like 7 of us.
On campus.
I heard at UGA it's 1.5% black men.
Facts.
And
I'm the researcher. I'm the researcher with that. I'm on the American Male Initiative, and that's one of the things we look at is
how many of those guys are football players. Like 1.5%. That's gonna be a big chunk of like
about 100. Like I sent an email out, and one of the brothers said, like, I was surprised at the number of men you emailed looking for undergraduate black men at the university, and the number was so small. And like, it was less than 1,000. I was like, it was close to 600. That's what I did. Like, at a university that has 40,000 students.
Flagship university.
Where you get 60% of your students from the Atlanta surrounding counties.
Suburbs. The white flat suburbs.
But you still claim it's Atlanta.
It's Atlanta.
The school still can't break 1,000 with black males and not break maybe 2,000 with the women.
Yeah, and how many of those black males are African? How many of those are descendants of slaves?
That's also been a context of my study, because I'm getting first or second generation African men, which is not a problem because they still have the same similar experience.
My dad's from Ghana, my mom's from South Carolina. So it's like kind of, I see it both ways. It's not the same.
Having to ask, like, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but can you give me a black, like,
I want a black guy. I want a guy who's speed chains.
He thinks he can't trace back his lineage far enough because he knows
someone got shot back there. Yeah.
Somebody got lynched and didn't show up back at home one night. Like, these are all realities that are different. That, like, the African kind of conversation has allowed, hip hop was something of the savior, but my parents always said, well, when it went too far, we can go back to Nigeria or Ghana culture. Right. We got something to fall back on. Right. Versus, like, in the black conversation, it was like, that's all you this got. Your culture.
That's it.
And your parents help you make sense of it. But even with your parents' music, it's like, my mom had to remind me, it's doing the butt. It's not doing in the butt. It's doing the butt. But it's like, this is the type of music you had, mother. Like, you were still disentangling this stuff as well.
Right. So, like, and we talk about that. Well, I think about it. I don't know if I've actually mentioned it on air. I think about black cultural decimation important.
Right.
Because it takes, and Oakeshott said it, and I've heard Elizabeth Warren repeat it, it takes 3 generations to make a career.
Right.
3 generations to make a career. Like, we're getting second generation basketball players now. Like, there's a reason why Steph Curry is Steph Curry.
Right.
And it holds a whole lot to do with his dad being Del Curry. Like, we're getting those generations. And those are just facts, right? So
same thing with researchers, the same academics and scholars.
Professors come from professors
right.
often, especially in philosophy. Philosophy is usually like a second generation professor. My dad was an economics professor, so I'm a philosophy professor. My dad was a blah, 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 and so I'm a philosopher. And so judges come from lawyers.
Right.
Like, it takes 3 generations. 3 generations. We weren't doing so hot.
But that's a rule of nature as much as anything.
Well, sometimes it takes a lot of time to learn how to do a thing.
Not just that, but to come out of that place that you were not doing that thing. I come to understanding that in your DNA, more likely, because of the memories of times previous, you probably were a lawyer or a person of the law before this time. Yeah. So it's kind of like you're just reactualizing some.
I also got to figure out
because you probably had legal troubles the whole time while you were going the other direction. Just understand, like, we went from being the people in legal trouble to now being the people who are in control of the law. That's oftentimes Kennedy's. Come on now, that's oftentimes the case.
3 generations.
It
Bush,
takes 3 generations.
3 generations.
Because not saying that their ways have changed,
right.
but the roles and the career, as you mentioned, has changed.
Right. Right, and I'm thinking about like computer programmers like Bill Gates. You realize he started so young, and like Zuckerberg, you find out his dad was a patent lawyer,
right.
which means a lot when you're trying to take over Friendster and like consolidate power and like having your dad be a patent lawyer, or Bill Gates having your dad be a patent lawyer. Yeah, Bill Gates' dad was a patent lawyer, so that means a lot when you're trying to take on Steve Jobs.
Right.
That means a lot. Like that's not just like when you can ask your dad for real legal advice about how to like crush a company. That's an advantage. So even if, I'm saying black people, even if we come up with the next Uber, even if we figure out a way to program it, how do we not get eaten by someone whose dad is like in charge of eating people?
And that's what hip hop culture is continually pushing. Right. This idea of, I will not be eaten by the system. So the system is still trying to somehow eat this hip hop culture to fully take control of it, like it did rock and roll. Jazz, like it swallowed it because it took ownership over the sheet music, took ownership over the words, ownership over 360 of the person. But hip hop is continuing like, well, for you not in control of that, let's be on YouTube like we are right now.
Right, until YouTube shuts us down.
Until YouTube shuts us down. What pops up next, and what you're kind of mentioning is that we're always going to be innovative because everything we do is criminalized. Everything we do, like it's all a circle that we keep bringing back to because it's. Part of me wants to say that this is all a black experience.
Speak to the people now.
This is all a black experience, and that's one thing that is powerful to realize that everything that's being done is responsive to that black experience that this world is having. That's one thing that we lose sometimes. Like no. Understand that they gotta have the BET award because they don't have an award show for us. Then no one believes in this award show thing.
Oh,
because we wouldn't believe. Similar to baseball. Baseball always uses my example.
So what's up?
Because baseball. They didn't believe that Babe Ruth was the best. Why? Because they knew by going out and, similar to Tulsa, going out and seeing Josh Gibson and things like this, like, oh, no. We can't really say. We want to believe people. We want everyone to believe he's the best.
Everybody.
It's not just one thing for the white community to believe it.
We want need black everyone. People to.
So, hey, we need Joe Louis or Muhammad Ali to fight the best white fighter so everyone knows who the best fighter in the world is. Who's the fastest man in the world. This is all things that are still about this black experience versus the other. And that's sometimes that I like to centralize the conversation. Like, no. Yeah, we have these other cultures that we have to be accountable for, but sometimes, especially in this American experience, it's been responses to black people and the black collective.
Yes. A lot of policy. A lot of, like, how many...
Black laws. They call them black codes.
They call them black codes. No, I'm just thinking about the entire industry. The industry from white flight, might be $1 trillion industry that's around getting away from managing black people.
Yeah, this whole industry is like, when you talk about realty.
Realty.
And one thing about watching, especially commercials in this area of Athens, because we're close to Atlanta, when you watch the realtors commercials, and you can understand that part of what they're saying in coded language is that we'll sell your house to the right people, and if we can't sell it to the right people, we'll pay for your house because we got to sell it to somebody else.
So that's anti-black racism that funds the realtor's cut. That's anti-racism that goes into the white family's house. That's anti-black racism that goes into the television company.
And we haven't gone to investments.
And then and it all goes into investment. And then that's a producer who produced that commercial that's getting paid, probably white. Like that's actors who act as like the nice white family that wants to
stock videos.
Yeah, so like that's all money around anti-black racism.
Either to bring it home, like either human beings were the value during the slave system, or now the value is being away from these people you don't want to be with.
There's a lot of money in being away from black people.
A lot of money.
Oconee County, this is kind of a local show. Oconee County is an entire county that's like, you can buy this house over there for a third more because I don't live there.
Right.
like that's its biggest selling point.
You don't have to deal with me.
Yeah, you got good schools, which means no Negroes. Because you've been a teacher, white boys are awful. Like just as bad. Like they're not, I'll just say like they're just as bad, and sometimes a little bit more entitled.
I taught in Concord, and it's like, sir, you need me. You're in a special education system.
Right.
But I know you don't have a racial issue, but you understand you can't spell your name. But that person is still entitled and feels entitled to their opinion.
Right.
And they're right. The way they see the world is right. And that's one thing that I used to have a difficult time having a conversation about black boys and men, young men, as a high school, middle school, high school teacher.
Yeah, that's
and
what
no. I came from Concord and understand that these are not. You can just. They won't go to Concord when a fight happens. Right. It can be just as brutal.
Right.
Just as many kids get hurt, but you never see the news go over there unless something major happens. Somebody gets shot.
But these white boys are doing just as bad.
Just as bad.
And the drugs are even more expensive.
My first time seeing cocaine in a school was in a rural white school.
I tell my friend this,
the only time. No.
The only time. There are moments in your life that you remember, and you just think that like, white people just don't know. And one of them,
I don't give them that. I can't give them that. I will not give them that.
Well,
it's a ignorance. It's a sophisticated ignorance.
It's a managed, learned ignorance.
They do that while you're still in the same room, possibly doing the same thing.
So here's the deal, though. We were all talking about that time I got fired. Right. I've been fired from a lot of jobs. I've been jailed a few times. Like, I'm still a fine human being. Turns out, if you're a black man of a certain age, sometimes if you say the wrong things, you might get fired. So, I was just talking about the time I was standing up for black people, and I was let go.
Likewise.
Yeah. Sometimes, on occasion.
Hey, I'm in a PhD program. I'm good. I'm good. I taught kids. I'm fine.
Yeah, sometimes I get fired. Mm-hmm. So from time to time, and I'm sure once again, like being in jail, if you put a list of the black people who've been fired, stand up for black people on one side, and the black people who've not been fired by putting their head down. I think the people you want to be with are going to be on the side.
There's a short section about the people who weren't in jail, and there's longer sections in the history books about people who went to jail.
So I've been fired. So we're all talking stories about being fired when I was in the master's program. And I was talking about I was standing up for black people and I got fired because I made my white boss nervous. And another student in the program was talking about the time he got fired. The white guy got fired. He was like, "Yeah, I got fired too. My boss caught me doing cocaine in the bathroom."
Right.
To which I said, "You were doing cocaine in the bathroom. You deserve to be fired. Right. You're a degenerate. You're a problem. You can't. That's not the same thing. Let me look at the camera. Let me get my camera on." That is not the same thing. No. You were fired for doing cocaine in the office bathroom.
You were standing up for yourself.
You were not standing up for an oppressed people.
Nah.
Don't put that thing. You're a degenerate. Don't put that same story in that same.
But that's a quality.
We were both fired. We were both fired, so it's the same thing. So that's a problem. So be afraid of white people who are in jail. Black people in jail might just be in jail for being black.
And that's that's a perspective that older generations kept. They held on to that. There's a doubt here. There's a doubt why this person's in jail or in prison. I feel like my current generation is always no, the legal system works out, and they just quit cops for killing people. It's no. The entire system makes mistakes. Every day, every year, I hear the same story of his bail was $1, or he spent 6 extra years in this space, and it's there's no 6 extra years. You make sure that anybody else, when their time is up, they get to go home, except black men and women. So you would make sure that a white inmate knew that his bail was $1,
right?
Because you knew that there's repercussions for that.
Yeah, you might have a daddy or a cousin or something like that you might want a job from. Yeah, I agree. All right, so I think we've gone over enough things. Want to take some calls?
Yes.
Let's listen to the people. We got enough people watching. Let me open up the phone lines. Give me a second. I'll put up the line. Give me a second, people. Let me put up the number. Yeah. All right.
Here we go.
There we go. All right, so we're going to take some calls now and see what the people want and talk to me and Quincy about black politics. And now, I just put up the number, so call in, folks. Let's light this up. All right, caller, you're on. Are you on?
Hello, Irony.
Hey. Hello.
Hey, Irony. I just wanted to say thank you for taking my call. I do have a quick question for you. I know that you and the gentleman with the cap earlier were talking about the concept of patriarchy and how, in the black community, there's really no such thing as patriarchy compared to other communities in this country.
Right.
But I kind of want to know your thoughts on societal male privilege and like how that applies to black males, African American males, if it can even be accurately applied to African American males. And the reason why I asked that is because last week, I listened to the show with you and Yvette when Dr. Tommy Curry called in, how he talked about there being this visceral hate of black males in this country, and it just kind of gets glossed over, under the guise of like feminism and patriarchy and things of that nature. And so right after that, I got into a debate with a few black females that I know, and I made the premise, being a Breaking Brown follower, that I'm a black man in the Americas. I don't have privilege, but they were saying that you're black, but you're a male, but you still have privilege, even though you're a black male. So I just want to know what your thoughts were on that.
You want to take it to me? Yeah, you go
ahead. I think oftentimes, like I was saying before, it's like a all men are all men conversation. Like we're the generation of all together. Like the 90s was building it up to where we are now, where it's kind of like in those personal, societal, interactionary ways, we like to say all people are the same. We all bleed red blood, so we all kind of have the same advantages and disadvantages, so we can know who the winners and losers are. But what you give context to is like, okay, men have privilege, yes, but we need to give that racial or cultural context, because in this country we know only certain men have privilege.
Right.
Only certain men have power consistently. So one thing that's kind of like, they've gone into our communities. Researchers have gone in our communities and disentangled our entire communities. So this is why the idea of black men having privilege inside these small communities or these communities is a narrative that gets propagated out there. One thing I have to deal with is these institutions are a part of the system.
Right.
Like UGA is not an aberration and is not doing some novel, regal work against the system.
So I agree. There's a book out there. It's called Social Dominance by, I want to say his name is Sedaris and Preto. It's a wonderful book. It's kind of heady, but Tommy Curry talks about it in his book, The Man Not, and there are a few other books. But you have to understand, when people talk about black men as having male privilege, that's not how it works. It's actually kind of the con. It's one of the propaganda.
It's a good con too.
It's a good con too, because it's got a lot of sisters who buy it. But like the smarter ones know that like actually. No.
Because it builds on the terrible experience of those women.
Right.
There's those things where the women, black women, we never want to invalidate those terrible experiences with black men they had.
Exactly, but it's been with black
men.
But it's
one of those things where there's still roots to that terrible act or terrible behavior that we don't want to. When we talk about, for example, rape culture in universities and colleges, it's like, well, how many college universities are predominantly historically black college universities?
Right.
So you know it has to be a white male problem, but we don't want to call it
a
white male rape culture problem.
At UTA, I didn't know, because I went to Berkeley and University of Chicago, where it's not as prevalent here.
Right.
These white fraternity guys
Yes.
are rapists.
Yes.
Like these are the guys who rape. Like
Facts.
these are those guys. Like
Right.
I didn't know.
But this is facts.
From,
this is facts amongst their community.
Yeah.
Like I've gone to a predominantly white institution where in a frat house it's kind of like the girls know this is a possibility tonight.
This is a thing in a way that like no.
This is weird. Okay, this is not okay.
Like these guys are the bad guys. And so when I explain social dominance theory to people who don't know, I say like, look, if you talk to any literary person. Right, any person who writes plays, they'll tell you that in a love triangle, say between two men and a woman, the real tension is between the two men.
Yes.
Yes. And it seems like the tensions, they're both pursuing the women, but the dramatic tension is between the two men. And that's good. So keep that in mind when you look at the history of colonialism, the history of chattel slavery in America, the history of anti-black institutions, and the illusion of white supremacy, the way it works, has worked in the world.
The first slave ships were all men.
What they want to do is take down, subjugate, castrate, and kill the men. We are the targets. So to think that black men and white men share the same power relationship, no, we are the primary target of the illusion of of the illusion of white supremacy. So that's why mass incarceration is primarily black women. Sandra Bland and Rakita Boyd, black women get it too.
Absolutely.
But if you look at the numbers, if you just look at the numbers, mass incarceration is a black male problem because we are the primary target of anti-black institutions. And that it's just the logic of slavery, the logic of colonialism. And one of the logic of this propaganda is another way to keep black men down is to get, unfortunately, all women against black men.
Right,
When you
right.
look at the data in Tommy Curry's book, I'll say this again, Tommy Curry's book, The Man Not, goes into the data, and it's very good on this score. Black men, historically, you look at all of the empirical data, most progressive. Better at sharing
fathers.
The most engaging fathers. Even when we don't marry the mothers, still
Right.
way more engaging.
Than white men who live in the house.
Yes, and better at sharing power. Much better at sharing power because, like I said, I've always taken orders from black women.
Always.
That's just been my life.
Always.
Like
and seeing my role models do the same.
Because like that's like the American economy is better for black women. So I've always taken I just assume that's just how it's done until you look at the way white men do not take orders from white women. Like that's real. Do not.
Even in the workplace, that I've seen issues where it's like, I've never had to do this before. I've never had to take orders from a woman, and I will not do that here.
Yes, I will not do that here.
So and they leave the job. Like,
yeah,
no.
I take orders like it's Tuesday from black women. That's just
from women.
From women. Yeah.
Because from my male privileged position, I've always had to take
orders from women. Yeah. So I'm used to it. It's no big deal. So and the data bears this out. We're better at sharing power. We're so.
If you don't look at black men and boys from a deficit perspective, you now can take us more holistically. But the propaganda and what we've been taught is that same oppositional culture. So if you were taught anything in a public school or any school in America, you were taught black men are historically bad.
Yeah.
Or historically, that's why the Nat Turner story is operationalized, because kind of it reminds you that there was a system in place. It was slavery. Yes, it was bad, but he didn't have to do that. And it's what is your response to a slavery system? What's a healthy response for men? It's a perfectly healthy response.
Yeah.
But we are not used to healthy responses by black men.
No.
Because the system has turned all people, especially women, against men, black male aggression.
Right.
Black male accountability.
Anger. Sometimes it's okay to be angry. It's definitely
stern voice.
Yeah.
How we're talking even in this podcast.
I mean, even when I take an interview, I make sure that you got, especially because you're bigger now, you got to make sure you don't take up too much space.
I used to put my hair back in a ponytail when I taught in Concord because I knew letting my hair just hang naturally or do what it does naturally sometimes is a clue into
black maleness. Now it makes people uncomfortable.
It makes you very in my classrooms, just attending class, static. It don't have to be anything cultural. My presence is uncomfortable for
and black women
students.
share the same thing, so we're in it together.
Always.
We don't share what they White men never have to turn down their white maleness in order to get a job. Yes.
And one reason why it's different, we don't have the same privilege as them because they now can look at our women without legality being a part of it. Higginbotham's book exposed me to the first laws as soon as they step foot in North America where you can't touch our women.
Yes.
That was before they put any slave codes down. That's what it was we're here in Jamestown, they can't touch our women, and we set up our community. Right. So it just shows you, like you said before, what is really important. It's keeping one people down while doing what I want to do and having a reign and dominion.
Right. So there's so many reasons. There's so many reasons why patriarchy never just doesn't apply to black men.
Now we have issues.
We have issues. So here's the deal. So when people think of patriarchy, when black people think of patriarchy, they think of Creflo Dollar, a big reverend, or T.D. Jakes, big reverend in front of a big church. No, that's not how patriarchy. That's sham patriarchy.
That's still a role created by the slave owner.
The Mormon Church.
The slave owner still created that role in the slave community. The slave community still had hey, you're a good guy speaking. You're going to be the pastor, lead these people to darkness. Really, because you're leading them to nowhere. It's really you're going to die in this, but Jesus is going to come.
So we in order to play the game, and this is one of my problems with respectability politics, because I think it wants to create sham patriarchs.
Right.
When let's not be respectable, let's be honest, because we're in it together.
Right.
But instead we create sham patriarchs. Because our sham patriarchs are sham patriarchs. Al Sharpton's sham patriarch.
Right.
That's not the Southern Baptists.
No.
That's a different kind of thing. And it's a qualitatively different kind of
He's
thing.
not even from the South.
No, he's
even though he's trying to fit this archetype, he's not from the South.
So our patriarchs are the patriarchs, the illusion of patriarchy in the black community is just that illusion to keep up the war against black men.
And if you take yourself to a place where you're doing reading and thinking, you'll understand that the numbers don't speak to this. The
Yeah.
numbers don't speak to how can you have patriarchy while single black mothers are also like it doesn't make
sense. Look, I'm the
which world are we going to be
producer
living in?
for Yvette Carnell's show. like I work, like I take her orders, I put up her thing. Like if I were a patriarch, that wouldn't work. But like, of course I take her because Yvette's a monster talent. So like, yeah, I just do what
I have
she
that
says.
same kind of situation where I do like local and state work,
Yeah, you
and
work
my
for
other
work.
half does the federal national
Yeah, because she's
program.
good at it.
Yeah, right.
You're like, okay.
Yeah, I have to drop off at the airport. I said, I'm your personal concierge. Like,
And like that's good. Let's end it together,
Right.
and like we're building it. We're doing black politics together. But yeah, no, I'm her second, and that's okay.
Right,
Like
right.
real patriarchs wouldn't say that. Wouldn't be okay with that. It'd be like, well, she really kind of no. This is a vet show, and I'm
The Obamas are not showing anything that's abnormal to a black experience. Like, oh, Michelle could do everything Barack could do. It's like, yeah, we all know that. Like, that's normal.
Black women have always been more educated. Like this is
She's the brains behind the operation. She's all
more stable in the labor economy. So like,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, we respect sisters, and like, yeah. All right. So let's go on to the next caller. Oh, hey, what's going on?
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Hey,
Hey.
I am on. Oh, hey, I didn't realize. Sorry, it's kind of lagging. So my name is Alana, and I am from Long Island, New York, and I've just been trying to get in, and I'm so glad that I'm actually on now.
Hey.
All right, talk to me. What's up?
Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can.
Okay, so I'm currently a college student. My parents are from the Caribbean, and
Okay.
they're specifically from Jamaica. And so I guess I'm more of an ally in this instead of being
A
instead
descendant.
of being a black descendant of slave.
It's complicated, but yeah.
Oh, no, the islands had it.
Caribbean.
Yeah.
And so I just. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can see you guys look like you can't hear me.
No,
you
yeah,
can. Okay. So yeah, it's just I do have loans from student loans. I am in the STEM field, and I've seen lots of you guys talks, and I've seen that the unemployment rate for us is ridiculously high. Anyway, I just kind of want some tips on I am going to this path of getting this BS degree. I'm almost done. I do have my loans. I am black and female, and I am going into STEM. What do I do in terms of politics and stuff like that? Because I'm so new to this. I've only been seeing you guys for about 2 months,
Okay.
and I just need some answers on how I go forward as listening on all this knowledge that you guys are imparting on me.
Okay.
It's kind of hard,
All right. Do you mind? I'm going to take your call off air. Thank you for your call. All right. So here's the deal. We've been sold the notion. I think we've been sold the notion that if you get a college degree, you're good. Right. Education is the answer.
Right.
That's not how this works. We still have to deal with employment discrimination. We still have to work about housing discrimination. We still have to worry about just the lack of capital. We live in a capitalist society without investment capital. Mm-hmm. So you can't go to the bars to network with the people you want to network to get the job you think you ought to have. Right. So the education is the key, but we don't have access to a door.
Right.
So what we need to do for black politics for this to work, we need to talk about pipelines.
Right.
We need to talk about specific problems for black people to get jobs for black people because black people have been locked out.
That's my answer. It was find your pipeline, girl.
Find a pipeline. Or you need to talk to your local people about establishing a pipeline because there should be a pipeline. We at least are owed a pipeline because education is supposed to be a key, and it's a key for a lot of other people. But the door we're often priced out. If the door is like an internship in some city we can't afford.
You're not the first black woman to ask this question about in the STEM field. That's one thing I had to make sure that I felt like I'm not the first psychologist who felt like I was the only black psychologist at a white institution.
Right. So we need to hold our institutions. Your university, you need to hold them accountable. Any administrator you can find or one of your professors about establishing a black pipeline. And real quickly, you said you're an island, you're from specifically Jamaica. It's actually really interesting because there's an interview on Antonio Moore's site. Antonio Moore he runs Tone Talks. He calls in pretty often. He's pretty wonderful as a human being, as a thinker and a black political thinker. He had an interview with Sandy Darity, who's one of the premier economists studying racial wealth inequality and the effects of wealth inequality at Duke University. And in his interview with Sandy Darity said, look, I've talked to admissions officers from Ivy League schools and at Duke University here, and they would rather have black immigrants than black descendants of slaves, because black immigrants are grateful to be here, they're happy to be here. Black descendants of slaves will come here and start marching, demanding rights.
Right.
So they want the black face without the black politics.
That's where we are right now.
Now we need good allies, and as a good ally, as an immigrant, as a daughter of immigrants or an immigrant yourself, what you could do is be a good ally and advocate for black politics and not step over the black descendants of slaves to get what you need. So what you need is a black pipeline that redresses the wrongs, especially done to descendants of slaves. But what you need is a black pipeline. Gets you a black pipeline.
For my African brothers and sisters, as well as Caribbean, those who are outside the American experience,
right.
We oftentimes are not accountable for the oppression or illusion of white supremacy internationally that they've experienced.
Right.
So sometimes it's kind of like, well, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Like.
But here in Jamaica, you'll have a class system. You'll have, like, they're used to dealing with corrupt black people because everyone's black, so they're used to dealing with corrupt people.
That's a dynamic that the American system has shown, but in different ways.
Right.
Like they've dealt with our president and leader is a corrupt person.
Yeah, he just happens to be a Negro too,
and he just happens to be a Negro too.
Yeah.
But we know he's not. He doesn't have our best interest because he's been handpicked by somebody else.
Right.
So that international system and that international engagement is something that when they come here and they're not as engaging with us, we don't understand it because we're not accountable. We don't know that knowledge, right. And vice versa.
So she asked solutions. Organize with black people to get you a pipeline or form one yourself, because the market doesn't have your interests in mind, and there are a lot of black people with degrees and loans without jobs or driving Uber, and you don't want that to be you.
Right.
We were sold a con, and the Cosby generation, the boomers, need to be made to account for
held
that.
accountable.
We were sold a con about education.
Especially understanding that who has the loan monies from student loans.
Right.
It's not just it's not them
right.
as much as it is us.
No, we come out with a burden.
Yes.
So we need a pipeline, and a black politics organizes for a pipeline. Stacey Abrams, future governor
needed
governor of Georgia. If you get your politics right, we will back you. You need to come at me with your pipeline for black people to get in all of Georgia's economy.
Right.
And it's got to be a dedicated pipeline.
As it changes,
a pipeline into the economy of the future, and a pipeline into the economy of the past. Well, I see some black plumbers, black heating and cooling guys, black cement pourers, black constructions. We've been locked out of construction jobs because cheaper labor comes from other places. So, I want to see your black politics as a pipeline to get black people into all of those good middle class jobs. I don't need to be a baller. I want to live around black people who make $80,000, $90,000 a year. That's my dream. Well, I have a dream where I live in a stable black neighborhood where everyone makes $80,000, $90,000 a year.
And that's worth something.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where the perversion of law in this modern era has been the issue. I know Orfield talks a lot about Brown versus Board and how that same ruling is being used for everything that's still changing education thereafter. Yeah. So it's like, no. My kid needs vouchers because you said they need a good equal education. And that good equal education doesn't include that many in that classroom or that many in that school, because I don't think that's the best for my child.
Right.
So
there's too many Negroes in my school.
It's because that's not the best education for my child. You see how this argument, the perversion of law has been the main issue, and if you don't understand how it's being perverted,
we could do a whole show on the perversion of law.
The whole show.
We might invite you back next time. Keep that. We'll do a whole show on the perversion of law.
I'll be excited.
This law, because affirmative action is another one. It started out for us, and then it ended up for everybody except us.
And how long is that ban? Everybody moving to this ban, and then we realized nobody heard us.
What about us?
What about us? We started the drums, and all of a sudden it's
Yeah, and everyone. And we need to be harder on our allies about this, because our allies should be fighting for us too. But we find ourselves fighting for.
We get in the streets for pride and all those other things, and it's nobody comes and shows up when people get killed, and it's a major message.
Nobody showed up to get black people jobs.
But it's.
I want them. I want
when lives
the LGBT
are lost,
community to talk about reparations.
When lives are lost, though, I take it as this is a major opportunity because the value of life. This is what we're here for. Right. So it's one of the things about jobs. We're not here to work all our lives. We're here to live and experience. We need extra capital, but it's still when people are unlawfully killed and the entirety of your community who organized around this issue is silent and scared of it, then I know who you are really allies for. You use me as a face more so than as a real ally.
A moral energy.
Right.
All right, let's take. I think we can do 2 more callers. At least one more. All right. Hey, caller, you're on. What's up? Hello?
Hey, how's it going? This is Steve.
Hey.
Calling from LA.
Yeah, my
What's
man.
going on?
I grew up in Baldwin Hills.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just out here for work, but
Okay.
yeah, I wanted to mention about the whole patriarchal thing, and it's to me it just seems like a big feminization of the strong black culture, strong black male.
All right,
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll talk about that. All right, so here's the deal. Masculinity can look like a lot of things, right? Like, masculinity doesn't need to look like patriarchy. We're men. Nobody's going to confuse us for, like,
No.
I've never been confused for anything but a man. Like, I'm a man. Masculinity...
I got long hair and I ain't never confused.
Yeah, never been confused for anything, but masculinity looks like a lot of things, and black masculinity is not and this is a kind of an academic word, but it's not the hegemonic masculinity. Hegemonic masculinity is one kind of masculinity that's not ours,
Right.
has never been ours. Our masculinity looks at what hegemonic masculinity, and that's the patriarchal white masculinity, and says, nah.
That's not us.
They're not interested. Black men are not even interested. Let's be honest. Black men are not even interested in being patriarch. That looks like I don't want
Too much work.
That's not my
Too much
life.
pressure. Like, it's
No,
not-
I've been impressed by it. I don't want it.
What you gonna do to your daughters?
No, I want to like my daughters. My daughters like me. So we're masculine, but not hegemonic masculine. Hegemonic masculinity is a particular kind of masculinity prevalent in the white community, not prevalent in the black community. And the people that try to pretend to be the patriarchs or hegemonic masculine, they're obvious. Like T.D. Jakes. Nobody really thinks T.D. Jakes is a patriarch. Donald Trump is a patriarch. T.D. Jakes, no.
Even a challenge. I wouldn't even call it a feminization. It's really believing or drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right.
Because we don't even
It's just a different kind
conceptualize
of
black femininity as weak.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Damsel in distress. No, black femininity is just as strong as black masculinity.
Yeah.
It has just as many colors and it is just as vibrant. So we don't even.
No.
I won't even call it
Right.
this feminization. It's a believing or drinking of the Kool-Aid that this is what all humanity sets their system up to be.
Right.
When men are there, it's going to be patriarchal. When women are there, it's going to be feminized or feminism.
But that's actually, it's a historical, particular way of doing masculinity and a historical, particular way that doing gender femininity.
Are we imitating the illusion of white supremacy, the illusion of white patriarchy, the illusion of white feminism? How are we as black people now, because we have all these philosophies from school,
Right.
now perpetrating that to our own people?
No. We never have, not convincingly.
Not convincingly.
Not convincingly.
I agree with that.
We look at,
So it's happening, but it's not convincing.
If patriarchy looks like Obama, then we don't have
But that's why I feel like
no.
feminism in the same way that it was
they're talking
in
about
the
white
70s. The
feminism.
white feminism
Because
it
black
just doesn't
feminism-
work with black women because they actually love black men.
Yeah, they love black men, and they're like Angela Davis. If you're talking about if I'm feminine, am I being feminized and compared to Angela Davis? I'll say yeah. If that's what it means to be because that's what it means to be a black woman. Black women have always been running it.
Even bell hooks, being introduced to her work and how she moves, it's kind of like I don't mind being compared to that.
I don't
because that's how my grandmother was.
Exactly.
So it's you like your grandma? I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
We've been told that before.
It's funny because my kids, I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. But they say when they're feeling sorry, they say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because that's the preschool teachers are all women,
right.
And I still haven't corrected them. I'll correct them later.
Right. We have those constructs.
Yes. Yeah. So if being feminized means being a black woman, I don't see it as that big of a
People
we've always been in it together.
As a teacher, they always want do I have this motherly love? Or I was like, well, the fatherly love is different, but the kids know how to respond to it. Yeah. That's really the most important thing. They don't need a motherly figure or you're feeling in a father figure. They know what a caring adult feels like.
Yeah, and there is a difference between men and women. But black men inhabit masculinity in a way that's not patriarchal.
It's not the same.
And because we've seen it and said
we're victims of white patriarchy.
Yeah, we're victims. They're no, No, like most black men I know, like I just don't see it. But the propaganda about
hip hop
black
and hip hop pushes this. Like hip hop in its most corporal commercialized form definitely pushes this idea that men are in their neighborhoods. So even in the hood ghetto sense, men are not in their neighborhoods running their neighborhood. Because more than likely, I know like the Get Down does a great job of like was it Fat Annie?
Yeah,
it was like behind all the men, it was a woman who was running the whole thing.
It's like they've always been together. Mom's made we got it's an entire history, but about. What was I going to say? It was about the illusion of patriarchy. Black men. Oh, okay. So one thing we get hit with is domestic violence.
Right.
We get hit with domestic violence, and then like Tommy Curry. Once again, Tommy Curry, the man not. He's a professor at Texas A&M. He like one of the best like young black intellectuals studying black men and boys like out there. I think he's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're friends. We were on a panel together last year, and he sent me this article about the actual data around domestic violence in black communities. And domestic violence in black communities, like everything else in black communities, is bidirectional.
Right.
And the variable you got to watch is poverty. It turns out poor people hit each other. Now, poor white men hit their spouses and they don't go to jail.
Right.
But like black domestic violence in the black community is bi-directional. That means she threw something at me and I pushed her.
What's
and
that?
Since I'm stronger,
Facts.
Facts. And since I'm stronger, like she got hurt and then got pissed and hit the. Right. She scratched me and I pushed her. She spat at me and then she knocked me and then I knocked her back.
All products of the system that has been imposed upon us.
And and the variable is poverty. Even
psychological, because poverty is just much a psychological imposition on the person.
Right.
Because I feel like we know in our being that this situation, I could change it if you gave me my resource or gave me the opportunity.
Give me my cut.
Give me the land. Give me something that is due to me, so I can change my own situation. Like every time it's like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, well, you never gave me boots or the straps.
Right. You want to do something about black domestic violence? Get reparations. You want to do something about black domestic violence? Come up with an anti-poverty program that means good jobs, land, good jobs, capital, pipelines. Like that'll make a dent into domestic violence because the data says it's bi-directional. It's people fighting because they're stressed, because they're broke.
And that's why I'm going to talk about the land and space because like part of the stress on black people that we don't often take into account is like how I didn't know how white people lived until I went to a friend's house and realized you have your own room and you have another playroom and you have another so hold on, so you had a man cave when you were a boy. And understanding what kind of mentality that breeds where my friend Parker had a room that he slept in.
Right.
Because he was the only child, had another room, and his dad also had the same thing. So it's kind of like he had that role model. So it's like
blow off steam.
It's a totally different lifestyle that is being lived and experienced to get us to this place where we both end up at UGA. Trying to figure this thing out.
And we're classmates. We're in it together.
We're in it together, and this person is trying to explain to me why intelligence is real versus fake. And it's like, well, how you acquire what you call intelligence versus me has been two totally different pathways. It's been a different pipeline, but what is that? Mine's been clogged. Mine's been like the sewer system. It's like it's got all this other stuff in it that people just throw down the drain.
Yeah. And then you got access to plumbers.
Right.
Yeah, all right, so we're going to take one more call. They don't
experience those apartments, you know?
Yeah. I feel like we should go Chicago, but any of those other zip codes look good for you?
I think Chicago is it, because nothing looks familiar.
All right. Hello.
Hey guys, am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello, you're on.
Hi, it's Michelle or Provolin, my username from Chicago. Couple of quick points to each of your topics. Patriarchy. Remember that during the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King gave this I Have a Dream speech, black women were not allowed to be on stage. When I went to the Million Woman March and I was doing sort of a survey, talking with women, all different backgrounds, white, tall, short, dark, young, old, and I asked them what their number one concern was. Their number one concern was violence. Violence against themselves, their families, and their communities. couple of points that I want to get something up really quickly. I want to maybe throw out some words of caution in terms of, how you, Yvette, and Antonio are framing this debate. For example, a couple of shows ago, you guys talked about Kamala Harris, and you highlighted her and how she is a class enemy, and how she did not persecute the white capitalist banker. And you spent a lot of time on Kamala Harris, but very little, or no time, on the white capitalist banker that she did not persecute.
Okay, I'll talk about that.
That she did not prosecute.
Right.
That is the truer enemy. So I just want to throw out a cautionary tale about being careful about being very quick to label black people as class enemies and not spending enough time with their puppet masters and the white capitalists. So give as much time to the white capitalist banker that Kamala Harris didn't prosecute as he did Kamala Harris. Lastly, let me just say, I have to ask Jeremy, I know that your wife is white, and I just have to ask, I'm not trying to be combative or hostile or judgmental, but I just want to hear you talk about how it is that you reconcile being so black and speaking on black issues and having married a white woman, spending a lot of your time around white people and that sort of thing. And then just lastly, the do for self. You said on a show that your the goal of this show is to make people critical thinkers and for the word that you use, organize themselves. There's another word you use, but at the end of the day, you want people to do for self. That's what you said on your show a few weeks ago, I believe, in response to my call. So there's really you, Yvette, and Antonio, and the do for self people actually have a lot in common. You just have a different path, but the same destination. And I'll shut up because I've been talking too much. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm going to just tick these off, right? So first we'll talk about the march on Washington. So we had a lot of black women on stage in the women's march. None of them talked about reparations.
Right.
So that's like, I felt like that was black faces being used to screw up black politics.
Similar to the March on Washington originally that you mentioned.
That was for jobs.
But well, understanding that oftentimes black men, similar to black women,
right,
when we're given an opportunity to stand up for one another, like our allies outside of it, we don't do that enough.
We don't do that enough.
So it's kind of like, oh, women can't be on the stage. Okay, we got to go with the march. I don't know what the situation was, but similar to that, like that's the kind of issue with violence. Like we're not standing up as our own culture and being propagated like the color purple. Like I always talk about the color purple. Like I'm not Mr. Like I'm not who Mr. was, but understanding that that's a profile of men who fed into that. Right. So there is violence in our community. Like one thing, always make sure we still validate that the numbers are still there. That domestic violence happens is a real reality, and that harassment happens is a real reality. Rape happens is a real reality. But ideologically, its roots are from an outside place, and this is a historical thing. It's not something that
history of domestic terrorism.
I almost have to ask sometimes, like, do you believe black men and women are like this in their natural habitat? Because understand that we've been put in a new experience that we've never. There's not a black country without the influence of the illusion of white supremacy right now. Right. So where's a black space where black men and women can actualize themselves in a natural habitat?
I don't know. Yeah, so we don't know. I've just heard mixed things about the so-called.
Thank you for holding us accountable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, these are open questions about the patriarchy of the civil rights movement. I've just heard mixed things about more hay was made of it.
Well, similar to the 1970s and feminism, we have to have a critical eye about the civil rights movement and the role of government not only infiltrating, but working with. Because you understand, like there was still things that were approved and signed for. Like,
like they had to get a license
it wasn't
for the March on Washington.
It wasn't a whole lot of
which
like.
Means,
and he had allies, and these allies were people who were the clergy, and people who. So they did great things, but we have to still, like white feminism in the 1970s, the counterculture movement. Like, who was all in the crowd, and who do they know, and who were they involved with, and
who were the real gatekeepers for the?
Who were the real gatekeepers for these things? And,
yeah. So like. It's something to be investigated. Insofar as it's true, it's a problem. Insofar as the only way we got this the only way we can get this march is if we get enough pastors on board, and the only way we can get enough pastors on board is to make our church look like the white churches, and the white churches are patriarchal. So, like, in order to get this march going, we need to put on a patriarchal front. Like, we don't.
It was no incident that you used this patriarchal system that was already there as far as Christianity,
right,
as the face of civil rights movement versus like a Malcolm X was right down the street.
Right.
Who, even though they're using a similar patriarchal system, that
it's complicated. I do know that there were women in the civil rights movement, and maybe we should do a show on that. Now, Kamala Harris, rather than the white banker she didn't prosecute, we don't have as much juice. Kamala Harris is being used against black politics. That's my problem. I don't have the same kind of juice against Lloyd Blankenfein. I don't have that Mnuchin. I don't have that same sort of juice. What I can do is that black people, before we find ourselves supporting Kamala Harris because of her playlist, let's make sure she has a black politics that's adequate to our need.
And this is where we find ourselves. That's going back to the first point about the violence against men to women, where we find ourselves pitted against one another. That's what the part of the system is supposed to do. Okay, all women pit against black men, or black men versus black women at all points.
I'm worried. See, and this is why, like,
you feel bad pitted at that point, though.
And I worry that Stacey Abrams will be used to neuter black politics. That's why I'm waiting for her. And like,
it happens in Atlanta mayoral races all the time. Like, historically, whenever Atlanta starts to uprise and start thinking about, like, no, Atlanta's never giving us what they promised us last election. They always present a new hip black face from Morehouse, from Spelman, or from Clark Atlanta that says, no, I grew up here, I have the best. And by the end of it, you get new stadiums, you get everything, and you get pristine,
moved out.
It's like, what was your real intent?
Yeah.
Similar to the Obama administration, we're really having a conversation like,
this
was just really good, but it was a good feeling. But what was your real intent? Because I feel like you locked up more of us. You locked up, we got poorer. Like,
what look really at black home ownership rates under Obama, like, wasn't what I wanted. Eric Holder. This is why I worry about our concerns getting ghettoized to criminal justice, because, like, we have education, housing, employment discrimination that we need a plan for, a worked out plan for. And we need our black people to be talking about these issues. Right. So, like, why we go after Kamala Harris, because she is the one I worry that's going to be used with our face against our politics.
And it's not the first time. That's another thing that I appreciate her, make sure we're accountable for the whole story. Right. But understand that similar to you being pitted in that conversation towards her, she's being used towards our community, is what you're saying.
All right, so the last one is about my white wife. All right, so yeah, my wife's white. Here's the deal. Black politics I'm not a separatist. I'm not a segregationist. I'm an integrationist. I just think black people need a politics that deals with white people standing up. Like, what I'm not is a back of the bus person. Right. No. Right. Now, I'm sitting right next to the white person. I'm going to marry the person I'm going to marry. I'm going to do it standing up, and I'm not hiding from anybody. What I think as a black politics, as a matter of strategy, is we need, since we have the most power in the Democratic Party, is to consolidate black politics and come with a black agenda to a white Democratic Party that's led by Nancy Pelosi, who wants us where she wants us, which is under her thumb. And so as a matter of political strategy, we need a black politics. So I live in a black community so that my daughters who will go to public schools have a bevy of people, many of them black, to choose from, who all come from middle class neighborhoods. So yeah, like, I'm not a black nationalist insofar as I think we need a separate nation. I do black politics because I think we need to deal. This is America. Right. We're 13% of America. We need to learn how to deal with these white people without giving over our interests and our claim.
Even when it comes to that number of 13%, I see black people all over the place. I want to challenge that.
Yeah, do you think?
I'm a person that challenges that. Even the numbers about who's here and
in Georgia it's 30. So we're 30% of Georgia, but we need to fight for 30% of them Georgia contracts. We need 30% of Ted Turner's land.
It's a sticky situation because a lot of it has to do with where we were brought up, like just literally your location, and we have been. It was a diaspora, and that diaspora continued even in, they call them Great Migration. No, that was just another part of the diaspora because you got out of that southern hellhole that kept pressing you down. It's like, I go anywhere else. I go to California, Missouri. It doesn't matter. It's a different place. So I can't really be too critical of people's personal decisions, especially as you start intertwining LGBTQ and then like interracial, all that stuff. It's like, hey, what's the main focus?
As long as you deal with white people standing up, like don't sell out, don't be grimy in order to like. There are a lot of people from HBCUs, a lot of people from Spelman, a lot of people from Morehouse, a lot of people from Howard who made a lot of money selling out black people. So
I have a hard time not being a separationist. I will say I struggle with not being a separationist because of those facts.
Right. So like I will say that like I always look for black contractors. I always look to black people to give money. Like I sought out a vet to figure out how we could do this show together.
Right.
But no, I'm an integrationist. But like if for no other reason than like we have to deal with white people. They're on juries too. Yeah. They're on juries more than we do. So we have to learn how to deal with them and deal with them standing up. And my wife supports this show, and she also supports reparations. We would have a problem if she didn't.
Right. That has to be a part of the conversation. Like, one thing about this conversation is about like how it could go awry as far as the interracial dating situation when that power dynamic is not there. But when you have that social justice core, it's kind of like you had to have this conversation.
No, she can't. We have a justice claim, and if you care about justice, you care about justice for black people. And if you're white and you care about justice, that still means you care about justice for black people.
Since you brought that word in, and social justice again, like I had a course where I had to remind people that we didn't get into this way of living and being in America through the social justice way. So justice has a couple different faces. Right. And one thing that we, in our current condition, don't accept is the ugly face of justice. Right. Like, there's going to be some justice that's what the lynching was about on their end. That this is the idea of that renegade justice for whatever affront they feel like happened in their community. So as much as we want to be peace and positive, there's justice that needs to take place that nature will will be part of. Yeah. And sometimes that won't look as pretty as go to court, bang a gavel, and it's not always that.
The lion getting chomping at the gazelle, that's nature too. I don't want to be that gazelle. Right. So real quickly, now do for self. Insofar as I think we should do for selves, I think we need to organize politically to get our cut of America. What I argue against is the illusion that there's enough black capital to actually get in the game and compete at the level. I don't think you can be the next Bill Gates. Insofar as you might have what's in his head, but you don't have the connections he has. So as soon as you make whatever you're going to make, I think white capital is going to eat it, take it, and then
they have not allowed that. That's one thing that I feel like we don't hold them accountable enough for in the black community, which is them boxing out local businesses, literally locking out local businesses, intimidating, shooting up, conspiring against local businesses and people.
We don't have access to lawyers. Like not in the
gun store, liquor store. Like that was a joke, but everybody got it in every black community in America when he said it. Right. That's not funny. That's the B side of a lot of his comedy. It's like he says things that is like it's funny, but why is it funny? That's what comedians are here for. It's like that's the black community in America. Right.
Yeah, that's black community, and that's why I get at, and I'm going to end with you. That's why I get at the illusion that Chance is an independent rapper. The illusion, because that sells that do for self. All you need to do is be in a studio and then put it on YouTube, and then the people will come. And like that illusion, I think is dangerous, and I think that illusion is part of the propaganda. I'm going to put the
even figuring out how you dance with the devil.
So talk about that.
The
illusion of the independent hip hop artist.
Well, because in this current American system, all the capitalists are white men. You know what I'm saying? All the capitalists in this current system are white men. So during this time period, there's no way Chance can be fully independent. So you that dance with the devil, that dance with corporations, even in any independent situation, there is some type of engagement that Chance or any other independent artist has.
You can't be.
Currency is one of my favorite, and he's an independent artist, but he tells you very open independent in how? Because I'm signed to them, and if they ask me for an album, I produce an album. Yeah, I do that very independently. I bring them a finished product, and they can say yes or no. We go back and forth like that. That's very different than claiming you're fully independent from corporations.
When all of Chicago owes your dad a favor.
Right, and understand, like I said, the historical implications of you having powerful family members, probably even throughout the history of Chicago.
At least one generation.
At least one generation.
Like, how independent can you be if you got Obama in your BlackBerry? You're kind of independent, but you're the kind of independent that means Michelle Obama can tape a video for you. I'm not that kind of independent.
I wonder if I'd be an independent researcher if Oprah was like supporting me.
Yeah.
Like, Oprah was funding my education right now, and people, he's a good independent scholar. I was like, no, he's kind of owned by own. Like, he's owned by own. Like, he does like, and my scholarship will show that. Sometimes that's the
Chance is independent when he goes after Michelle Obama for not like fighting for lead, getting the lead out of Flint's water.
Or Obama for that reason.
Well, yeah, like that's what I'll say. Like this guy actually has independent cred, but like no, he's a Democratic plant. Well, we have to
take imperfection as something that's more natural than anything. So all these packaged comments, like if your homie's messing up, we know that should come out in your conversation. So if my homie was really the Obamas, it's like no, I support him for the most part, but they had some more power they could have extended with what they could do. That's not going to be a part of the conversation.
You know what I think? Independent Negroes look like God. There's a baseball player. It wasn't Sheffield, and it wasn't. Maybe it was Deshaun. Someone's friend got caught up in a murder. And I can't remember if it was a baseball. It wasn't the baseball player, but they just said like, "Look, we hung out. That's my boy. I'm not going to turn in my boy for that."
I can't remember.
But like, do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a year or 2 years ago. YouTube. Do you know who I'm talking about? YouTube's really good at this. Who am I talking about? It wasn't Chef. It wasn't Deshaun. It was a baseball player, pretty good baseball player, pretty good basketball player who. A pretty good baseball player, pretty good football player who wouldn't who got Keyshawn Johnson? No, whose friend got caught in the trouble, and then they had to get brought down for questioning, but then wouldn't give up the friend, wouldn't snitch on, wouldn't just throw his friend under the bus, although it was the respectability politics of the thing. And I'm thinking that's an independent Negro.
Yes.
Craig Hodges, independent Negro.
I can't think of him.
Yeah. I'll do some research.
That's what I was a stop stitching era.
Yeah,
that's when I was in high school. The stop stitching, and that was to me that was a whose side are you on conversation. Like, are you for your neighborhood or against your neighborhood? But it was like if you extend it further, it was like no. Are you with the police or against the police? Are you with the system or against the system? Because the system is trying to help your neighborhood, but have you question what the help looks like?
Good. All right, so it's about time to wrap this show up.
Yes.
Thank you, y'all. I guarantee, and I'll look in the camera. Now, Yvette, don't make a liar out of me. But Yvette will be here on Monday, holding it down, and she'll give you more show than you could ever want. And thank you for your time with me. And look, subscribe to The Funky Academic. This is my channel. I'll do videos. Eventually, this channel is also going to do a show called The Black Athenians, where we do local politics, we do it hard, we do it right, and we try to model what black politics can look like at the local level. So subscribe now. You can go to my page, www.thefunkyacademic.com, and see some of my videos. Some of my early videos are just me breaking down basic concepts in political philosophy, and I do it to 70s funk and 90s hip hop. It's pretty good. So look at those. And I have some interviews there. It's at thefunkyacademic.com. And subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your friends that The Funky Academic's doing the kind of black politics we're going to need. And I'll see you on Monday. And you plug something. You got stuff going on.
What's going on?
What do you got, Quincy? Say your name.
Quincy Brewington again, UGA student. I've actually spoke all over the country. That's what took me out to Anaheim in California. So if you're trying to bring me out, definitely hit my email. That's all able to find online.
Quincy L. Brewington.
Yep, that's my name. So bring me out for anything with students and young people or culture. I'm an educational psychologist, but I do a little bit of everything. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're both PhD students at the University of Georgia. And with that, I'll sign off. Hey, thanks, guys, for watching and your patience with us.
Peace.
Peace.